Welcome back everyone, it's Charlie. This is going to be my new Spider-Man 3 video, and I'll explain what's happening with the future of Spider-Man in the MCU after this, in the future of Spider-Man movies in general. There's going to be some big changes, and there's an important reason why they're rolling so hard on Spider-Verse during Spider-Man 3. I know everyone's hoping for a new Spider-Man 3 teaser trailer of some sort really soon. They're about due for some news. But if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. Of course, I'll do videos for anything that they release. Obviously, they're going to be filming Spider-Man 3 for a while, but they do have enough footage to actually release a trailer if they wanted to. As you've seen the past few months, more and more characters from the Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies have been added to Spider-Man 3, and like clockwork, Andrew Garfield, Emma Stone, even Kirsten Dunst's cameos were announced recently. Most of the reports are saying that Tobey Maguire is still getting ready to sign his contract, but just hasn't quite done that yet, but he was seen at a costume fitting, so it does seem like he's eventually going to be a lock for a cameo in the movie. One of my new favorite jokes, though, is that there's so many cameos that it seems like are happening in this movie. The one that people are most hyped up about is Tom Holland hopefully getting a cameo in his own movie. But even before all this Spider-Verse stuff, there were all these Sinister Six things that the Sony people were talking about, so we knew that they were eventually going to build up to a Spider-Man vs. the Sinister Six movie. So why then are they pivoting to all this Spider-Verse stuff too? Why do you need to add that into the mix if you're already doing something as big as Spider-Man vs. the Sinister Six in the MCU? They totally don't need to roll that hard. There are a couple important reasons why they're doing this, setting up the next 10 years of Spider-Man for practical plot reasons, but also there are a lot of financial reasons why they would roll so hard on Spider-Verse so quickly. Amy Pascal said a couple years ago after the animated Spider-Verse movie was released, it was so well received, one of the best Spider-Man movies of all time, that the studio had also been thinking about doing live-action Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. But at the time, the producers of the animated Spider-Verse movie said that Sony had blocked their attempts to do cameo scenes with Tom Holland, Andrew Garfield, and Tobey Maguire, saying that it was too soon to put them all in a movie. But this is a couple years ago.
At one point, I was supposed to be in it. Yeah, there was going to be another Peter Parker. Oh, really? Like there was like a scene in a train station or something, and like it was going to be like an Easter egg. I was going to walk through the background and say like, "Hey kid" or something, and never happened. I'm heartbroken.
That was just Tom Holland talking about this deleted scene in the subway that you saw during the Spider-Verse trailers that didn't make it into the actual movie. That's where his cameo scene would have happened. But then a couple years go by, and Kevin Feige at Comic-Con 2019, which feels like it was almost a million years ago at this point, remember when we used to go to conventions? He talked about how the concept of the multiverse would be a big trope of Marvel Phase 4, starting with the WandaVision episodes, her alternate TV-looking reality where she brings Vision to life and magics up her two mutant children from the comics, Wiccan and Speed, or Billy and Tommy. Then they announced Doctor Strange 2 Into the Multiverse of Madness is going to be peak multiverse craziness in the MCU, and then announced that Sam Raimi himself, Mr. Spider-Man from back in the day, is going to direct the movie. People start wondering if he's going to include Tobey Maguire cameos during that, but then the rumors about Spider-Verse Easter eggs in Spider-Man 3 start. So it all starts to make sense, things come into shape. Way more multiverse than you ever expected in Spider-Man, but it makes sense given how the multiverse is going to affect the story of all the Marvel Phase 4 movies and Disney Plus series in some ways, some more than others. And because there's a mystery crossover movie on the Sony Marvel sharing contract for Spider-Man, there's two movies, there's Spider-Man 3 and a mystery crossover movie. Now it seems like that unannounced mystery crossover movie is going to be Doctor Strange 2. So Spider-Man will go from Spider-Man 3, and now because of the way they've rearranged the Marvel schedule, Doctor Strange 2 comes out right after that. He'll just cameo in that, just like Thor crossed over into the first Doctor Strange movie, then Doctor Strange showed up during Thor Ragnarok. And while this is all happening, in the background, you have Jon Watts, the director of the Spider-Man movies in the Marvel Universe, slowly transitioning away and pivoting to the Fantastic Four franchise. So where does that leave Spider-Man solo movies going forward after Spider-Man 3? Marvel still wants to have Spider-Man in the MCU for the rest of time, if possible. I mean, it'd probably buy Sony outright if they could, but it'd probably be a big antitrust situation. We know that Sony confirmed that they do have a fourth movie planned with Tom Holland, a fourth Spider-Man solo movie. They didn't say what that movie's going to be, but after that is a big question mark, and it seems like it might actually be the last legit Tom Holland Spider-Man solo movie in the MCU, but not the end of Spider-Man in the MCU, and not the end of Spider-Man movies in general. So now you see why the concept of the Spider-Verse in Spider-Man 3 is so important for helping them set up the next 10 years of Spider-Man stories in general, not just Tom Holland Spider-Man stories, but all Spider-Man related movies. Because you have the Sony movies, the Venom verse, Morbius, all the stuff they're trying to do with the Spider-Man characters that they control but that aren't in the MCU at this point. And you have other characters like Miles Morales that Marvel has already introduced in Spider-Man Homecoming, but they haven't really activated, like he's still kind of riding the bench, so to speak, from a story perspective. They haven't really turned him into a big character yet. When I also say they have some financial reasons for wanting to roll so hard on Spider-Verse, you have to think about it this way. Spider-Man Far From Home made over $1 billion at the box office, and they had Avengers Endgame as the lead-in, which gave them a little bit of a bump. Sony is thirsty to make another $1 billion+ on Spider-Man 3, not less money. Like, what would get your casual Spider-Man fan, not a super fan, but just a casual fan, way more excited to rush out and buy 4 tickets for his entire family to see that movie, bringing back Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and some of those other characters. And even though the memes are going to be off the charts and we'll be making all kinds of jokes about Tom Holland being a backup character in his own franchise, when really this should be all about Tom Holland's MCU Spider-Man, despite the rogues gallery of characters that they're piling into Spider-Man 3, most of those characters will probably just have very brief cameo scenes. There was even a rumor recently that they were trying to get Leonardo DiCaprio to cameo in the movie because at one time, before they made the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, James Cameron was going to make a Spider-Man trilogy and he was going to be James Cameron's Spider-Man. But this is way back in the 90s. It's just the concept of them trying to get as crazy with the live-action version of this as they did with the animated version. The animated Spider-Verse movie was great, so theoretically, if they can pull it off, the live-action version of that would be even cooler. And from a practical plot perspective, the next 10 years of Spider-Man, so to speak, Kevin Feige has already confirmed that Sony plans to cross over Tom Holland with Tom Hardy's Venom, and it would be a Sony movie, not an MCU movie. It's much easier for Sony to do all their universe building in the Venomverse with movies like Morbius, the other Venom sequels, Maximum Carnage, if they just say it's all happening in an alternate universe and use the Spider-Verse twist. Live-action Spider-Verse in Spider-Man 3 is also the easiest way to help set up the concept of Miles Morales' Spider-Man down the road so that they can do their own trilogy of movies with him. Who knows what they would call it? As long as they don't use home in the title, I'll be fine. But like I said, they still want to keep Tom Holland around for as long as possible because he's kind of like the new Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man character. Spider-Man as a character is probably one of the most important characters to Marvel's identity in the history of Marvel Comics. They even put his face on every single comic that they shipped for a good long while. He is also one of the few characters who remembers everything that happened before Avengers Infinity War. He was there for that, and he'll be there for all the stuff that happens after Avengers Endgame. So he's sort of the bridge between the Marvel Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3 stuff, and all the stuff that's coming in the future with Marvel Phase 4, and eventually X-Men, Fantastic Four stuff. So he brings this point of view perspective that's invaluable to the storytelling going forward. So solid chance that he cameos in the next Fantastic Four movie with John Watts because they've been working together for so long. Then after that, he just starts coming back for the big crossovers like Avengers 5, and then potentially coming back to help mentor a young version of MCU Miles Morales once they eventually introduce that character. And I think one of the few changes that they'll probably wind up making is that they'll find a way to introduce Miles Morales without killing off Tom Holland's main MCU Spider-Man. If they're going to kill a Spider-Man off as part of the Ultimate Spider-Man origin story, it would probably be someone like Andrew Garfield or Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, the older, world-weary versions of Spider-Man. But let me know in the comments, though, if they start using Spider-Man more like Iron Man, giving him more Avengers crossovers instead of solo movies after Spider-Man 3 and Spider-Man 4, which movies do you want to see him in?
The Fantastic Four.
Affirmative.
And there's another who was a big help to me against Carnage and Venom. There's another team of superheroes that I've worked with before. Computer, bring me one of the X-Men.
Which one?
Good question.
There should be a new Venom 2 trailer and a new Morbius trailer really soon. Morbius is still supposed to come out in March. There are a lot of Spider-Verse Easter eggs like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man suit in that, so hopefully we'll start to see what's going on with all these Spider-Verse Easter eggs really soon. There is supposed to be some special Marvel trailer event on New Year's in China, so hopefully some of that footage will make it online. Whatever they wind up releasing, I'll do videos for, so as long as you have alerts enabled for my channel, you should see all those videos when I post them. I'll be doing WandaVision weekly episodes really soon too. That'll start in a couple weeks. While you wait for everything, click here for that new Marvel Fantastic Four teaser that Kevin Feige released recently, and click here for that brand new WandaVision trailer and big Marvel X-Men Easter eggs. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe. Happy New Year.